Welcome to the Wilson Center Middle East Program Art and MENA series, where we feature artists from the region to highlight their diverse work. My name is Brooke Sherman, and today I am thrilled to be speaking with Abdulnasser Gharem, an internationally acclaimed artist and pioneer in Saudi Arabia's contemporary art scene. In 2013, he founded the Riyadh-based Gharem Studio and is also co-founder of the nonprofit Edge of Arabia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd like to start just by asking you to share when you first became interested in art and then decided to pursue art as a profession.
You know, actually, I'm from the south region of Saudi Arabia, and it's a small town there. So I was encouraged by one of my teachers when I was in the middle school, and I was wondering why this teacher is following me and talking to my family that we keep telling them your son is so talented, and I wasn't, at that time, it wasn't that, I don't know how I would describe it. It was like a moral scandal if you're gonna be an artist, because we were surrounded by this conservative you know, ideology or whatever it is. So it's started from the school as a kid, and from there, when I tried to go and study art, but it didn't work.
What do you mean that when you studied it, it wasn't working?
Yeah, but yeah, I was so happy when I was in the high school. I thought I'm gonna be the artist in the future, but there was no infrastructure. There wasn't, it wasn't that popular to be an artist at that region. You know, in the southern region, there is a lot of military bases. Sorry, so most of my friends, my relatives, they were in the army, and so that's why I said, okay, I'm gonna go to the army, and I stopped being an artist.
I see. Yes, I was curious, at the time when you were younger, as you had mentioned, it wasn't as common to become an artist. It sounds like, especially from the region. And then when you had wanted to study, there was kind of a lack of resources for you. So you decided to go, you went into the army, as you had just mentioned. What was your transition then into becoming an artist as your career? How did you then decide to pursue it again?
Yeah, I mean, I think my generation, we were lucky because the internet just came in the late of the 90s. So to me, it was like a new source of knowledge. And I found out that I miss a lot of things, not only in art, I mean, in art and philosophy and history and in everything. So I started to educate myself from the beginning. So, I start to think, okay, I mean, I could be I could, practice the artist again. And after seeing a lot of examples, abroad, a lot of important artists, like from America, Saul Louis, most of, and the Renaissance movement in Europe and all of that. So it really start to activate me again. And I found out the art is a medium. I can use it to say my opinion. So that's what's encouraged me to become an artist again.
And can you tell the audience a little bit more about the type of art that you use, and also what are the themes, and as you just mentioned, your opinions, what are the topics that you cover in your work?
Well, actually, my inspiration came from my daily life, to be honest. That's why I'm trying to be a contemporary artist, and it's related to my cultural resource. So most of my stories, I get it from where I am, and I dig deep in it, and also I'm considering the situation around me. It's and I always keep saying that the people should distinguish between the governments and the people. That's one thing. The other thing I keep saying is there is a big difference between the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression. So, and I keep saying that the freedom, the first action of freedom need to happen in your mind. And we need these kind of people who gave us these kinds of thoughts. Because I found out in this region, actually, not only in this country, in this region, whenever the freedom of expression, there will be a lot of consequences. So why would I go there? So from this point of view, I start to do my artwork. So I think my artwork negotiate the people issue, and I'll try to find the connection between us here in Saudi and I'm trying to find the common thing between the people all over the world, and try to throw some dots and let the people connected. So what I'm trying to say is, I think what will create the art piece is the understanding of the viewers, not vice versa. So I'm negotiating a lot of issues like human rights issues, political issues, economic issues, cultural issues. But as I told you, I don't say it in a direct way. I give that margin to the people to be engaged with me. So what I'm looking for is a kind of a statement from everybody. Either it's good or bad, I don't care, but just activating them to come up with a statement, I accomplished my mission.
So I know you are based in Saudi Arabia, but you've exhibited and brought your work around the world now. Again, a very successful career that you've had. So I'm curious, as you mentioned, that your work really focuses on engaging with the audience, and you put your work out there and then let them kind of absorb it the way that that kind of connects with them. So I'm curious if you think the audience engages with your work differently depending on not necessarily what region, but where you are demonstrating that work. So, for example, would you say that your relationship with the audience in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East region differs from your exhibits, say, in the US or in Europe? Or would you say it really just depends on the work that you're actually exhibiting?
Honestly, yeah, I consider that. If I'm gonna have a show in New York, it's gonna be totally different than if I'm gonna have a show in Rio. But I don't underestimate the viewers. I mean, all of my career is based on viewers, feedbacks actually. So it's hard to explain, but I think I need to be aware of well, first of all, I don't want to upset anyone. Honestly, that's not my job, or to provoke anyone. No, I want to be engaged with people, an idea and a discussion and a dialogue. So lately, I'm not showing in country. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, I'm not showing here, and I'm focusing abroad because most of the issue is I'm focusing on lately is on the refugee, the climate change, on on me as a person from the Middle East, how the other absorb me, how they you know a lot of things I'm trying to discuss. So yeah, it's different when I'm showing here in the Middle East and when I'm showing in New York. And also, I'm considering if I'm showing here in the Middle East, I know the people can't talk, can't tell their real feedback. So why would I embarrass them or put them in? But yeah, I can throw some hints, some codes there and there, and I'm sure they get it.
Sure, that's a theme that has come across in the interviews is just the power of art in messaging. And even if, in the moment you're not able to have a conversation about, these topics that you are demonstrating, still people can go home and have conversations, in more informal settings, or even just with themselves, they see a piece of art that might invoke some of these themes, and that gets them, personally thinking. So I think that's one of the really unique things about art, is just its ability to communicate in very different ways, informally, formally, with vast audiences. So it sounds like you've really been able to succeed in that, depending on where you are exhibiting. I'd love to hear more about the two organizations that you are involved in. So you founded your own studio in Saudi Arabia, and you're also a co-founder in Edge of Arabia. So if you could just speak a little bit more about the experience of founding an organization, maybe starting with your own studio. So what inspired you to found an art studio, and also what has your experience been like running your own company, especially in art company?
Well, it's again, it's an NGO studio, and I remember in 2013 when as I told you in the beginning that I'm from the southern region, so I moved to Riyadh in 2013. So first things I was looking for is a studio, as an artist. So when I moved to Riyadh and I found the studio, I was shocked. There is a lot of talented people, boys and girls, but they don't have the equipment, they don't have the space, they don't have, let's say, a place where they can speak freely or exchange their idea or whatever it is. So I told them, why did you come with me in the studio? And yeah, you can use, whatever I have. I mean, like equipment of my library, or even the people who I'm meeting, they are still young and they need this kind of connection. They need to, to meet people, to at least show them their work, whatever. So that's how the studio started. It was like it happens organically, and I was in 2013. It was hard to. It was really hard in the country to let's say put the boys and girls at the same place. So we were like hiding from everyone, and we were trying to do these things, privately, without inviting people. I mean, without inviting the public, or something like that. But honestly, in 2016 and 17, with this, openness we have now in the country, so we start to announce that we have a program like for teaching. We have kind of a small residency. We are inviting a lot of professors to teach. There is a lot of girls here in Saudi Arabia. They can't suffer yet. So, what you have seen in the media, yeah, we have that kind of openness, and the women's have their rights, but there is still some part of the countries that they that kind of enlightenment didn't reach them yet. So that's my role as a studio, to invite them with their dads, and they can come to the studio. We organize like lectures and like. So I'm really happy with what I'm doing, and I think it's part of my mission as an artist. It's not just doing artwork. No, it's create that kind of environment where the people can come and feel free. There is like a kind of booming in the country now. Now we are happy with what's happening in the country. Like we have now the first pioneer in the area. We have a desert X and Alola. We have all of a lot of things. But in the end of the day, it's still under the government umbrella. And I'm sure there is hundreds of people, they want to be like dependent and creating their own career without any influence, without any let's say, whatever it is from the government. So I think this kind of a space is becoming so important, so that it will attract these kinds of people, those who's trying to be independent.
Yes, I know the government can play a very important role in giving those resources to emerging artists. That I know you had mentioned at the beginning of your career, there was kind of a lack of infrastructure, and even socially, a more closed environment for artists. And it sounds like in the last decade, things have really been opening up. And I know in part the government of Saudi Arabia has been investing a lot in arts and culture. But I'm wondering what, like now that things are opening up, what can kind of give it that next push, if you will, that you and other artists are looking for? Do you think it's from the private sector, more investment in artists from the private sector? Are there, other actions that artists themselves can take, like establishing more collaborative spaces? What would you say are some ways or strategies that the art scene can continue to grow and flourish in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, I mean, in the end of the day, the government can't control the whole country, if you know what I mean. I mean, they can't reach. I mean, I would love if the model that we have, the studio, will be in each neighborhood. That's you know, and I know, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but we are focusing on the artist. How can he build his own career, and how can he be connected to to all over the world? And we are trying to be sure that if this artist will stay with us here in Gharem Studio in Riyadh, he can move to Berlin or to New York, and he knows the ethics and he knows the infrastructures, and he can build his own things by himself without relying on the government. Because yeah, as you mentioned, the government are putting a lot of money in the scene right now, but I think it's affecting the private sector because if the artist is gonna get like 100% from the government, why would I pay the gallery like 50% while I can get it by myself? This is good for the short term, but for the long term, I think this is not going to be good for the scene or for the artist, because if the government is going to stop the fund, what what they are going to do? There is no knowledge, there is no experience. Again, there is no infrastructure for the private sector. But we are still in the beginning, so that's why I can't blame them. We are still in the beginning. And I'm not just complaining, I'm trying to play a role by my studio, by teaching, by telling them, putting myself as an example that I did this by my own self and you can do this. It's like passing this kind of knowledge I got to them.
Yeah, you're touching on a really important point, and that's art education. And it sounds like that's kind of at the or one of the central pillars of your organization, and not only giving, resources and a network for artists, but also just practical skills that they'll need to be successful in the industry. So I'm very keen to hear more about that. So can you just speak, more broadly to the importance of art education in your country, and not only for artists, so not only for people who are already interested in the industry, but also more broadly for the public. So, getting the public more engaged in the art scene, and even youth, bringing art education to schools. Again, if you can just speak more to the importance of that.
Well, there is a lot of amazing things that the government did lately. Well, first of all, now they start to teach the music in the schools. Before, when I was a kid, it was prohibited to draw while we are drawing. So we were confused. Shall we draw or not draw? I mean, in the school they are teaching us, but the most they are saying no, it's prohibited. So, but I think lately what the government have done, especially in this dimension, is amazing. As I told you, they start to teach the music. They teach the art now. We have like a music institute now for the talented people. They can go there and learn for free. We have, as I mentioned, the biennial, which is, I mean, it's an infrastructure. It's a full infrastructure. I mean, galleries with studios. It's not only about the biennial. It's working most of the year. And as you can see, there is a lot of event. Like we have something called Noor Festival, which is like a festival about art and light, and that's how the public engaged, and it's become like part of their daily life. You know what I mean? You know, usually what we were doing before, just going to restaurants. That's the whole picnic in the desert. What we were doing as a family when I was young. But now we have a lot of. I mean, that Noor festival, it was amazing. I took my kids; they love it. It's all about light, sculptures. We really, I mean, spent the whole day without even knowing. So these kinds of public, projects and private projects, you know, scheduled project like this will, liberate the mood of the nation, the people. It's nice to be part of their daily life, going to work or coming from work, or just having their kids there around these new things. It's inspiring.
It's such an amazing difference from when we started the interview, when you were talking about when you were younger and how you were interested in art, and it was just very taboo and very, against the grain at the time. So what an amazing change that's taken place. And the last thing I'd like to ask you about is the other organization you're involved in, Edge of Arabia, and that is more, as I understand it, more focused on the art scene across the region, across the Middle East region. So I'm just would like to hear more about your involvement in that, and also the importance of strengthening the ties between artists across borders. I know there's been a lot of change in Saudi Arabia, but there are other countries that have less resources, and artists, there aren't seeing quite as much success as in the Gulf countries. So can you speak to that as well?
Yeah, well, the Gharem Studio things happened in 2013. Edge of Arabia things happens in 2000. We started that in 2003. And I remember when we started that, we were so depressed because of the Iraq war. I mean, all of the region, we were so depressed, and we were talking to each other. What is it just like that? We can't do anything. And the scene in the country was, it was controlled by some like governments, institutions. So there was no way to. So we met. I remember me and Ahmed and Stephen, and we started said, why did you do anything? We can't just stop. So we came up with that idea. Edge of Arabia, that name came because we are from the south region at that time, and it's like nothing behind us, just Yemen and the sea. So we said we are the edge of Arabia. So that's where the name came from, and we start to we created that NGO organization, and I'll be honest at that, because sometimes in your country they will not believe you until you get some kind of recognition from the West. And that's what happens with us. When we start showing in 2008, it was the first show, everybody was happy that we did it. It was in London, the show in South Carolina. And we start to be approached by, by museums, by the journalists, and when the people here have seen that, they start to believe in us. So a lot of businessmen start to support us. A lot of government entities start to sponsor us, and that's how we started Age of Arabia. And it was really an amazing platform where we can, independently, we can talk to the others without no one in the middle. So it was different to us.
And since then, it's grown to be a very expansive network. I heard of Edge of Arabia even before I started this series. So I think you've done a lot of work to reach artists across the region.
When we started in Arabia, it was, as I told you, it was so the country was so close, so it wasn't easy to invite anyone to come and help us. So we were doing all of that thing by ourselves. We're doing that studio visit, talking to people, talking to the sponsors. But we were, I mean, I don't know. I think we were lucky, and the good intention were there, because I remember in 2011, we were discussing, I mean, we were talking about the education program. We need to create an education program armed to Age of Arabia. what we're gonna do to the young generation. How can we involve them with this movement we are doing? Because that's the continuity of it, or whatever it is. So I remember in 2011, I put one of my pieces in an auction house. It's a charity auction house, and we were expecting like $100,000 or something to do a small program for 5 or 6 kids to take them from Saudi, and then the price went like $842,000. So we said, "Whoa!" So you see, when we did action, and we didn't just complain. No, we said we need to do something, and we started doing it. We got the result, and everybody was happy that we to do this kind of education program to the kids, take them from Saudi, take them to London, take them to America, show them the institution, do a studio visit, and it works. And most of these young kids, they were with us. Now they are established artists. They are in the scene. They are a well-known artist in the scene. So I'm happy that I was part of these things.
Well, you've done so much important work for artists, honestly, across the world, and really moving the industry forward. And I think it just shows the importance of, ground up change and just empowering artists like you and the other people that you work with to be able to do their work and disseminate it, and bring their work to people who need to see it. I really, I know that you've made a huge impact on the region and the art scene, and you will continue to empower emerging artists. So thank you so much for your time, and it was a real pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.